Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. And tonight we are shining a light on the darkness. I'm Shane, joined with Eileen Colts from One Channel. I got your name right. It's not a Mande1a Effect. She didn't get an S thrown on her name from something. So sorry about that. I did leave an S off her name, so just in one of the previous videos. And hopefully SpiritWalker will be joining us. Both of their links are in the description. But we just wanted to discuss some of the history of what we think of as the darkies, the people, running things on the planet, and some of the differences and some of the titles we hear, like Illuminati and Luciferian, or Satanism.
Satanists.
Yeah.
So can you guys hear me okay? Because I lost my sound, but can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I just can't hear me. I just hear silence, but that's okay. I'd rather hear you.
Okay. Yeah, that'd make it easier. Yeah, I normally echo back to myself if I hear myself, so it's a good thing.
Maybe that's why. Just cut it off.
Perfect.
So yeah, I did research last year, and I was kind of following the trail of the Knights Templar, and everybody seems to know that when they were banned and persecuted and executed, 500 of them were executed, 4,000 of them made their way through Portugal to Scotland, and they became the Scottish Freemasons who founded America. So it's when they became Cathars, Jamie sent us a link. Did you see some of the links that Jamie sent last week about the Cathars who were the Knights Templar?
Yeah, it's such a convoluted topic, isn't it? I mean, you see so much about it, and some of it is conflicting, and it's like, what do you believe about this stuff? Because it's hard to tell. It seems like a lot of these started out as a good thing, and then sort of at some point they just got hijacked or went astray or something. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is that while the Knights Templar were guarding Jerusalem during the Crusade, they started the first international bank by issuing the Pilgrims credit notes. And then if you made it safely to Jerusalem, they would give you the money that you gave them in France or England or Germany. So it became kind of profitable for people not to make it to Jerusalem, because then the Knights Templar could keep it all. So that was, it seems that money tied to religion has always gone south, has always gone a bit evil, don't you think?
Yeah, and this really ties into, like, when you look at some of the bloodline families or whatever, and how they've been on this mission. They've funded each side of wars, all of these decades or centuries really, and it's like it's all been like what do you call it? Like a ploy.
It's about the money. It's about the money
and control,
not about the faith.
Exactly. And that's sort of, it's all about power and money, it seems like, at the end of the day, with all of these people controlling.
It is, because I think in the olden days, we don't think about it now, the government was the church, wasn't it? At some point, the bishops would rule your territory, and that's who you would report to. So they were like the governors.
Right. And it's sort of like, you see on either the chessboard is a perfect example of, how you got the kings and the queens, and then the bishops are right there, and then the knights. And it's sort of taken from that time of, what we're talking about.
And the Illuminati still use the chessboard, the black and white checkerboard, which I'm not sure. I don't know the reference, what that refers to. Do you know? Have you researched the black and white checkerboard?
I have heard about that. But I think it's just sort of pointing at dualism,
Well, I looked at the wedding. I didn't watch it because I didn't want to be part of that, because I just don't want to be part of that echelon. And I just took a look at some of the still frames. And as they were walking down the aisle, Meghan and Harry, it was all black and white checkerboard.
Oh, really?
In the church. Yeah. And I thought, why? Why would a church have black and white checkerboard on the floor? It's not a very churchy thing, is it?
No, it's not. And it's really another great way of looking at it is the Vatican right now. I mean, they're the government and they're the religion, and they're running everything there in Rome. And it's really an extension of, although the territory is much smaller, of ancient Rome. When you follow Christianity, you can sort of see how Rome took it over. They moved to, what was it, Constantinople
in Turkey.
And it's Istanbul now, right?
Yeah.
But then they moved back to
during the split. I remember the main growth, the heyday of oh yeah, but it was there. It did go there before it went back to Rome, didn't it? And then when Rome at Nicaea said all priests must be celibate, that's when the Eastern Church split and went to Constantinople permanently and said, no, our priests have always had families and children and normal relationships. This is what's interesting. Jamie sent something on, I'm not sure if it's on Gnosticism, because you're going to talk more about that. I don't know a lot about Gnostics yet. I'm just starting to delve into that. But it said historically, whether it's true or not, it could be. We never know what to believe anymore. We have to use our gut instinct. And then if a lot of references come up that verify it, that kind of helps. It was when the Knights Templars established the Port of the Grail, which is Portugal, and they named themselves the Cathars, the Knights of the Cross or something like that. It translated into the Cathars, that the order decided that the world was dark and evil. Therefore, they could only practice sex that would not result in children. So think about it. If you have a whole religious order that says sex is okay as long as it doesn't produce children, that can branch off into all kinds of really, really dark places. Children, animals. I'm not going to like talk about homosexuality because I respect people's personal choices. But when an entire religion says you may not practice heterosexual sex if you're a priest, then you're actually pushing people into a direction that they might not normally choose to go, So I'm not judging people who choose that for themselves, but I'm saying perhaps a huge religion should not enforce it on everybody within their religious ranks. And those Cathars did go up and establish Scottish Freemasonry, which SpiritWalker's done some videos on, where he shows where Scottish Freemasons became satanic with two particular leaders, and they established the United States, the New World Order, the Rothschilds, banking empire. It's like the Vatican is the religious center of the New World Order. London is the financial center of the New World Order, and Washington, D.C. is the militaristic center of the New World Order. And interestingly, all three of those places are completely independent of the countries in which they reside. Did you know Washington, D.C. does not hold to any of the laws of the land? It's completely independent from the United States.
Yeah, I have heard that.
That to me is crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, they've got their own thing going on there. And it's part of, there's so much information out there about, how we're really just, what's the word for it? Not collateral, but, or is it collateral? Is that the right word for it? We're really collateral. We're the capital, I guess, with the social security number and, and we're really like stock and we're the stock, you know what I mean? With the finances, and a lot of the money gets funneled back to these bloodline families anyway. There's so much information out there that when you really get to looking into it, you're like, oh, wow, it's really handled like a corporation, America being a corporation. And so, yeah.
And the New World Order is like a giant corporation.
Right. And it's almost like these different countries and different religions and all are really just a front to show separation. But at the very top, they're all like playing for the same team. You know what I mean?
But it's not our team. It's not Team
No, it's not our
America.
team.
Yeah, that's the really sad thing is that, someday I really do believe that we'll be evolved enough that we'll pick our leaders based on their actions and not what they tell us. We've got so many leaders. Trump was a good one, Clinton, Obama, much better than, say, Bush. Reagan was a great one, who the way they talk to you, they convince you that they have your back and that they're in it for you. And then the minute you vote for them or they get into office, they're suddenly picking, banking leaders, corporate leaders, military leaders in their cabinet, and then they're making all of their political moves to help the banking industry, the corporations, and the military industrial complex. And suddenly the American people don't matter anymore because they got in. And it's like, at what point do the American people say, this doesn't work for me? This is not working. The other thing is we allow the deep state to pick the candidates. So we don't really have an open democracy where anybody can run. You can't run. I can't run. They literally are handpicked, two-party system. And that old Native American Indian quote that the left wing and the right wing are on the same bird, I think really fits our political system. Don't you?
And it's a false dichotomy. It's like it's just giving you this illusion of choice.
Yeah.
But they all end up at these Bilderberg group meetings. You know what I mean? It's like, okay,
yeah.
You're going to be a choice and you're going to be a choice. And it's crazy.
So I'm not going to say anything about Trump, but he did pick like from Goldman Sachs and Rothschild's Inc. in top positions right now. And but maybe he was a better choice than Clinton, because I couldn't vote for her. I was just at that point where I would not vote at all unless I threw my vote away on the Green Party, which I think got 2% of the nation's. I just couldn't go to the polls, but I wanted to go because I've never not voted since I was 18. So I voted Green Party, not even that I wanted to. It's just that I didn't feel I was being given like a real choice of a good person.
Exactly. Yeah, I know how it is. It's like the lesser of two evils. You often hear them say, you're given a choice, but and then you get this third option or fourth option, but they don't have a chance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you look into England, they've got a multiple party system, and the last government had to like consolidate from 3 different parties, which I always think is a good thing. The more the merrier. And the Green Party does really well in Germany. It does okay in England. It's just very new here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I think America's waking up. I think the sleeping giant is awake, and that's us. And everybody's talking about this now, not just the usual suspects like, us. Everybody's talking about it. And Q had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and I was just telling you about how that's seems like a quagmire now when you look into it. So many people are saying so many things, and I've just had to take a step back, like I have with politics. It's like just take a step back, see what happens, be an observer, because at the end of the day, it all seems like it's just kind of set up. I mean, I hope for the best.
Yeah.
I have I try to be optimistic about it, but I can't really put any stock in anybody doing the right thing other than optimistic.
We trust each other. We trust our gut instincts. Maybe this is tuning up our internal BS detector, our internal instincts. That's what I'm saying about Q, because it's really annoying that 8chan, 4chan, the bakers are based in Australia, and that's where Q really started on the channels with the bakers, with their boards. And, you've got Cicada getting involved, and then there's the reputation that Cicada 3301 is actually recruiting for the CIA because their puzzles are so hard to crack. And, then you've got different characters on the internet outing different people. I like to watch Uni Rock and Lift the Veil, but those are my personal preferences because I think they're pretty honest people.
Yeah, and they seem to be pretty unbiased or not jumping on board too much with any of it.
They got a lot of flack. They got a lot of flack for saying, "Hey, we found out that they've taken down the Q posts, they renumbered them all, and they got caught on a hot mic." talking about renumbering the Q post. So they took a lot of flack for that. So good for them. That was a real truther community. This is not going to make us popular, but we're going to tell you what we found. Anyway, but then what I was saying was that if Q, whether it was fake or not, and I think it was fake, woke up a lot of the world, not just America, to what's going on with the deep state in Washington, D.C. and London, and all over the world, actually, then Q was a good thing if it woke people up to the truth of the problems we're facing.
Yeah, it reminds me of something you'd hear in church a lot, or I'd hear in church a lot growing up, and it was like, what the devil means for evil, God to turn to good,
Yeah.
So, and it's good symbolism, although,
No, that is. I like that.
And it's like you see a lot of that now. You see things, they plan one thing, and then like
something
I don't know about
I
don't know about it, the secret space program and all that stuff, but you see a lot of that with that. Like they plan this certain thing, and then things go wrong, and it backfires on them. And you hear about a lot of this, and they say we have higher help, or that they won't allow this to happen. And I don't really know, but
well, you had your starseed reading, and she said that when she was doing your reading that there's this non-interference. And if you look at Jane Goodall and all the great people who went out into the wild to study apes and gorillas and chimpanzees, they could not interfere, because the moment they interfered, they changed the group's behavior and they were no longer observing a natural group. Well, most of us here probably believe that there are other life forms off of Earth and that they're probably watching us or visit us. But, should they really be coming down and interfering with our politics? Even Star Trek, the movie, gets in trouble when they go interfere with people's evolution. You're supposed to be allowed to evolve at your own pace and in your own way. And if higher, more advanced beings come in and start messing around with us, then we're no longer evolving at our own pace.
Right. And if they do intervene, it probably has to be like on the down low. I mean, like stopping a nuke, making it look like it just eroded or something went wrong technically, or something along those lines. If they do, I mean,
yeah, they've actually shut off power plants. I mean, anybody who watches, I used to watch Ancient Aliens for 12 years, and then they started having Podesta on this year, so I won't watch it anymore.
That was mind blowing when you told me that. I can't believe he had strings to get on there. It seems like
he has nothing to do with it. What does he have to do with alien intelligence? I don't know. I'm not even going to go there.
And I think it was one of the disclosure, like back in 2001 when they had the disclosure, the big, where 700 people came out. One of them said that there was some kind of craft that came over and disabled some nuclear warheads.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right. So I can see things like that happening. I saw the same
disclosure.
Yeah.
It was like a big conference of military people.
Right. And then I was talking with Joseph Reyna when, we had an earthquake up in Alaska that the tsunami warnings went off and everything, but somehow the waves stopped. And I can see off-world beings maybe having the technology to calm the waters, if you will.
Sure.
Who knows?
Or some people attribute that to angels when they sense an angelic presence. They have miracles. I've read a lot of personal miracles where people have miraculously survived something, and they feel that there was some angelic intervention. So the other thing that happens on the flip side of that is a lot of YouTubers, not that we follow or participate in, are calling aliens demons. They're saying if you're not human, you're a demon. So, this whole Satan, demon, Lucifer, Set, Beelzebub, Malek, there must be just there's so many names for a dark entity that is not as powerful as God, but is more powerful than humans. And the only problem with that is you can trace that character into literally every single human civilization has something that fits that bill. And often people attribute bad human behavior to that character. The devil made them do it. The devil is, you'll even see it in YouTube comments. If something bad happens, they'll say, oh, Satan is very active right now. And you think, well, hang on a minute. If you attribute everything evil and bad to Satan or Lucifer or whatever you want to call it, how can you ever overcome it? You'll never be as powerful as that kind of a creature that you've developed in your mind, or the myth. Therefore, you can never overcome it. Therefore, you can never fix the problem. But if you
It's a cop-out.
if you eliminate that character and go, well, actually, who perpetrated this? Oh, it was human beings. Yes, we can fix that. We can overcome that. We can do better. That allows us to change the negativity. But as long as we're always, I think that's probably why the Illuminati throws a lot of Satan at us, so that people think, oh, it's not humans doing this, it's Satan. That way they can get away with a lot more.
Yeah, it's this unseen evil force that no one can do anything about. And I even at a time when I never became like atheistic, because I think there's just too much going on to see the world as just what you see is what you get, sort of there's nothing else beyond this life. You died, it's all over with. Is that when you think about people that do acts in the name of God, whether it's strap something on and go into a crowded place and do something, or something like that, you think, whether there's a God or not, here we have an effect of there being a God, because those people who did that act believe there's a God, right? And it works the same way with evil. Every evil act we see happening is a person doing it. So whether they attribute it to Satan or anything else, it was still that person that acted on that. If it was Satan on their shoulder whispering in their ear, they still acted on that demon on their shoulder, and it was still a person at the end of the line.
It had a human element to it. I mean, way back, they used to attribute demons and Satanistic type of figures to volcanic eruptions, because that was pretty scary and they couldn't control it. So now that we've evolved to the point where we understand that the earth is letting off some pressure, we're attributing it to the evil acts of certain human beings. And I think we need to kind of push that aside and take a look at the people who are perpetrating whatever it is you don't like, and think, well, how can we change that in a positive way, not a negative way? What can we do to make that better?
Right. And then that kind of brings in the element, I know this is probably going to cross many people's mind, is this idea of some of the technology we have, that, voice of God technology and things like that. Even with that, though, it's still, at the end of the day, someone listened to that voice and acted upon, thinking someone told them to do something or whatever. And that gets into mental health, the mental health arena,
If hearing God is a mental health problem, then there's no Bible, because that means that it was completely interpreted, written, and I know it wasn't written at the time, it was spoken by crazy people, because they were listening to God. They were called prophets. Right. And there's no reason why it's okay for people to hear God 2,000 years ago, but not now. So it's either okay to hear God now, and it was okay to hear God then, or it's not okay to hear God now, and it wasn't okay to hear God then. It can't be one or the other. It has to be both, right? You have to be consistent in your interpretation. Is it okay to hear the voice of God?
So do you think with these when we look at these groups, how do you see the difference in Luciferians and Satanism as far as your research?
I'm so glad you asked me. I'm just saying that because I've just been doing a lot of research into Luciferianism, and I still don't have my head around it yet. And what led me to trying to see the difference between, because there's a big difference between Satan and Lucifer in terms of the people who are practicing it. Maybe. So maybe you can help me out with this a bit. I read all the Rudolf Steiner books and the Waldorf schools. I know people who go to them. I sent my daughter to one for 1 year. And they're as good as the people who run them. So they're not scary places. They welcome all religions. And they're very child-centered and artistic. It's like you focus on the gifts the child brings instead of trying to force learning into each child to be exactly the same. Math, English, science, math, English, science. So I understand Rudolf Steiner's educational philosophies. They're a little bit like Montessori. But I also read Madame Blavatsky, very, very famous spiritualist from the 1880s to the 1920s. And then I read Alice Bailey, 4 of her 19 books. And this is the really confusing part. they coined the word New Age. They coined the word New World Order. This is the 1880s to 1920s. They coined the word Aryan race. Where have we heard that before?
With Hitler, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. And they coined the term Age of Aquarius. So everything metaphysical that people are practicing now in a positive, loving, gentle way comes from these writers, the theosophists. Very hard word to say, theosophy, theosophists. You know, there's a lot of S's and F's in there, so I've been practicing. And, you know, when you read their stuff, it's really positive. It's like New World Order, one government for one race, one humanity, equal treatment of all races, equal sharing of the world's resources. It's very positive. And somehow they got a hold of this. Hitler and his backers were the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Vatican, because after World War I, Germany was completely bankrupt. They could not afford to go back into war at that level just, 15 years later without some heavy hitters financially backing them. And the backers were the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and the Vatican, until people started to criticize them for backing Hitler. And, Hitler was all about the Aryan race and stuff like that. And they said he was an occultist. Well, I think he was a theosophist. Mm-hmm. And they supposedly created the war. They funded the war to create a Jewish problem. And it was a serious thing. I mean, nobody's denying that the persecution and the genocide occurred. But they supposedly orchestrated it and funded it in order to create a need for the Israeli state, which is exactly what happened with the Balfour Declaration and 1945, 1946, 1947. When did Israel become?
Yeah, I think it was
a state.
With the Six-Day War and all that, right? Or whatever.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah.
So whether that is no longer in conspiracy theory. There's so much factual evidence to back that up when you follow the money, that seems like it could be a logical reason for World War II, at least, when they say that the Rothschilds have been behind every single world war, starting with Napoleon, the Napoleonic Wars. Because every time there's a major world war, there's a reshuffling of the countries, and you get this territory, you get this country. We're going to give Czechoslovakia to Russia and Poland. Those were free countries that we gave away to Russians and communism, and we had no right to give them away. We didn't own them. Those were not our countries to give. So every time there's a major world war, the bankers are the ones who really make out in the end by controlling the finances and printing the money for a lot more governments at the end of, divvying up the nations. So getting back to Luciferianism, those people published, well, actually it was Alice Bailey. She published her books under the Lucifer Publishing Company. And that was for 4 years. And the reason being is that they argued that Lucifer was the light bearer, because Lucifer in Greek and ancient languages means bearer of light, the light bringer. And they kind of held that Lucifer was victimized in the Adam and Eve stories, where he was saying, eat of this apple and have knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that's supposed to be the illuminator. Light, the illuminator, illuminating human minds to bring them illumination, knowledge. And that it was the Hebrew Bible and the Hebrews, the Israelites, whoever wrote the Old Testament, who punished Lucifer by calling him Satan and saying that he wanted to give knowledge to Adam and Eve for negative reasons. But the Luciferians believe that Lucifer was the good guy, and that the God of the Old Testament is Satan.
Exactly. And that's actually what we were bringing up about Jesus saying the same thing, is that
exactly
their father was the devil, he said. But I want to interject right here, because when I read through Genesis and the whole story of Adam and Eve, it was mind blowing when I, because I read through the Bible dozens of times, but one of the times it's sort of, each time I try to be more open-minded or whatever. But when you read that story, they were both told something by each of those two characters in the garden. One said, when you eat of the fruit, your eyes will be opened. The other, which is God in the story, said that in the day you eat, you will die. And I know that religion says, when you eat of it, your soul died, or
your innocence dies because now you know.
Right. But they were both told something, but only one of them seems to have come true. I mean, without the doctrine added to it, when you read the story.
And the doctrine came much later.
Yeah.
The doctrine was not added in the time of Jesus. That was added over and over and over again by the Vatican and changed and edited.
So it kind of blew my mind. It's like, wait a minute, one of them lied. He's supposed to be the father of lies, but yet what he said came true. Their eyes were open. They saw they were naked and all of this. And like I said, its doctrine has been placed around it to sort of make Lucifer the bad guy. And I also want to make clear things up with Lucifer and Satan. From the Christian perspective, Lucifer was before the fall. He was the angel. He was the good angel, and then he wanted to be like God and had a fall and became Satan. That's sort of the Christian worldview of those two names. So it's really the same character before and after.
Good. That's good to know. So. Because now, when I learned a little bit about Gnosticism, so following this through, let's just go back. The Lucifer Publishing Company was not accepted, so it changed its name to the Lucis, Lucis, Publishing Company, and the Lucis Trust, which owned the 666 building that Trump's son-in-law bought.
Right.
And they are now in the United Nations, and they are printing all United Nations material. And if you followed the White Rabbit material that was kind of put up on different boards and things, and Discord and places like that, Twitch, the Lucis Trust is just above the Bilderberg Group. So, you've got the CIA, Mossad, MI6, MI5, really down low. And then, you've got Skull and Bones, and then you've got Bohemian Grove, and then you've got the Bilderberg Group, which came out of the Trilateral Commission. I think that's where they came from, right?
I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some very international.
But this actually ties in with the Zionist too, doesn't it?
Well, this is the thing. So now you go to the Lucis Trust and the Aspen Group, which I know nothing about. They're right there together. If you go above those two, you're talking about the 13 families, and that's where Zionism comes from. Okay. That's the 13 families it's the Rockefellers and the Queen, the Rothschilds. There's a lot of other names that people aren't as familiar with.
So it seems to be a push then. A lot of the things you were mentioning, like one world government and things. Oh, there's Paulo. How's it going, man? Welcome to the
SpiritWalker. Hey, Paulo.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, I'm having difficulties with the technology.
No problem, man. It's probably something astrological.
That's okay. Take your time. You're sideways. Are you on your phone or your laptop?
Yeah, the phone. I had to use the phone.
So flip it the other. There we go. Yes. Last week I had tech problems and I had to use my phone, didn't I, Shane? Yeah. Last Friday night I could not get onto Google.
Yeah, same thing. I'm glad you made it though, man. What time is it there? You're SpiritWalker's joining us from Australia, so
what time is it?
Yeah, it's 1
in the afternoon on Saturday, correct?
1 in the afternoon, yes.
So are we time traveling now? Am I are you hearing me in the future?
Yeah, we are already in the future.
You are lucky.
Well, this was a good time to come in because we were talking about Satan versus Lucifer, and we did the biblical differentiation, and then we did the Gnostic. Like the modern Gnostics are kind of like accepting Lucifer as the giver of light, as the Christ. If you come across that, because old Gnostics were all about the internal knowing, the gnosis, the wisdom that comes through prayer, meditation, and a contemplative life. But modern Gnostics keep talking about Lucy. And when they're talking about Lucy, they're talking about not only Sophia, the goddess of earth, which is fine, Mother Earth. But when they talk about Lucy or Lucifer, they're talking about Lucifer.
Right.
Yeah. It's very difficult. When you talk about Gnosticism, it's very difficult because they have the notion of the demiurge, which was the old, let's say, egotistical god, creator of humanity. But and then Lucifer came around to enlighten humanity. So that's something that they tend to say. Now the where I get really confused about this is when you go back into the Old Testament, and you have the figure of Jehovah. According to the law of one, Jehovah originally was a benevolent group that started contacting us, and that benevolent group or that benevolent contact was co-opted by Orion. And Jehovah, the angry God, or the jealous God that we know, is in effect, according to the law of one, is Orion.
That's interesting because historically you can trace that god to the god of war in Babylon, the Mesopotamians.
That's right. That's right. So when you start considering, or when you start thinking about the god of the Hebrews being an angry god, and then you start thinking, okay, which god is this?
Mm-hmm.
Is that Orion? Is that the group of Orion that came along and thwarted the whole thing? So in which case, if that is the case, then you would imagine that Lucifer was actually playing a double game.
But then
So
why would modern Gnostics adopt Lucifer if the old Gnostics didn't? When did Lucifer, because we were just talking about the Lucius Trust and Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Alice Bailey, and they're very much involved now in the United Nations. So, Luciferianism seems to be a part of the New World Order, which they coined, the New Age, which they coined, the Age of Aquarius, which they coined, but in a negative, dark, almost satanic way. Even though when you read their work, there's no negativity in it. There's not a drop of negativity in it.
yeah, I think, well, one of the theories that I work with is that Luciferianism was a rebellion that was, I think it's a rebellion from Orion, created against an angry god that was also Orion. So it was playing a double game in humanity, and taking advantage of the state of total confusion that we live in. And the key here is that Lucifer is light, and they say, look, Lucifer is light, and that's a good thing, and that's wisdom. But what the law of one also discusses is that light over love, or wisdom over love, may not be a very good thing. These negative guys, they are full of light. So in other
Wisdom.
words, they have a lot of wisdom. They have a lot of
Knowledge.
knowledge. They know how to do things, but they couldn't give half a rat's ass about everybody else. So they use that knowledge to enslave, to control,
Service the
to
self.
hurt.
Yeah.
So it's that idea of the bringer of light. So if Lucifer is the bringer of light, I'll have to admit that yes, he or it is the bringer of light, the bringer of knowledge. But light without love, or knowledge without love, is not necessarily a good thing.
It's dangerous. It's empty. It's dark. Not knowledge without love. What would the point be to knowing something if it didn't somehow engage your heart, right?
That's right. Exactly. And that's where you have all of the conspiracies, because you could imagine that giving us knowledge without us having already developed fourth heart, fourth chakra, which is heart, love, it all leads to all sorts of troubles. We have quite a lot of technology. We have the airplanes, and we use airplanes to bomb
the
people.
nukes. Yep.
We have nuclear energy, and we use that to build bigger bombs. And so the impression that I have is that Luciferianism was pushing for humanity to have more and more technology, not because they care about us, but because they knew that we would misuse it.
It's kind of like giving a kid like a gun or even a food processor, something that's really meant for something really simple and innocent, but you give it to a little baby and he's going to probably chop his hand up or something. You know what I mean? And
right.
It's that same type of mentality, I guess.
Well, then let's compare that, guys, to Satan and Satanism. Remember, so we've just done the Theosophists. What about Aleister Crowley on the other side? And Paulo, you did an awesome video about two characters who infiltrated the Freemasons and brought Satanism into Freemasonry. And it's different to Luciferianism. It's different, but it's like the same at the same time. It's different, but the same.
Yeah, help make a distinction between that. What do you how would you separate the two, or would you?
Yeah,
that is a very that's a very interesting question. I see both as the same, but I think that Luciferians and Satanists, they would make a slight difference in that Luciferianism is about empowering yourself and about being able to do what you want to in rebellion against this God that is perceived as evil and authoritarian and all of that stuff. And they believe that this is ultimately a good thing. In Satanism, they are way out of the scale in believing that we do have knowledge, we do know how to do things, but I do have a desire for evil, and I am not going to pretend that I am I'm doing good for society, because my desire is to embrace evil. So that is a very subtle difference in my opinion.
Do you believe that the New World Order is Luciferian or satanic? Because often when people describe Hollywood, they go Satanists. And when they describe some of the activities, the international pedophile rings, they go Satanists. But then we've got Luciferian publications right in the United Nations. So when do we decide which one to use? And is there really any difference? What about the people at the very top who are running the show on this planet? Are they Satanists or Luciferians, or none of the above? Just pretending.
Yeah, in my view, there is absolutely no difference, and Luciferianism is the philosophical mask that they use, trying to receive some type of acceptability, trying to convey some type of we're not only out to hurt everybody else. There is a philosophical reason why we are doing these things. So that's, to me, that's Luciferianism. And Satanism is when the mask falls off, and they say, look, I'm not even caring about justifying my actions. I'm just going to go and do it. So,
is one more into rituals than the other? Like when you look at is one more into rituals than the other, or is it just part of one's more, you're just saying one's more, a little more on the down low, I guess. Luciferian, the Luciferian agenda, they try to be a little more hidden, where Satanists are a little bit more open about it, but it's really not much different at the core of what they're into.
That's right. That's I think that Satanism is slightly more into rituals. And
Okay.
And rituals, when you look at rituals, you need rituals because when you are performing a ritual, you are creating a mental picture of things. And these mental pictures, they are essential if you are going to invite or summon astral entities, because this is the language that is used in the astral, in the mental realms as well. It's all about mental and images. And so when you are performing a ritual and you say, for example, you visualize a ball of light in front of you, etc., in the astral realms, this ball of light is there. In the mental,
their creative energy, they're really using
right,
in a dark way, really what we try to do in a positive way, or even unknowingly do with our thoughts. If we're constantly thinking of being unforgiving towards someone, and we're constantly resonating and creating, there's no doubt that if you're an optimistic person, things just seem to work out better for you. And if you're sort of pessimistic and down on everything, I see it all the time, with different family members. Some of them, it's just like life's horrible. And as a result, it seems their life is more horrible because they're always thinking about how horrible it is. And it's almost like they're creating it. Yeah. But they're purposely trying to use dark magic, if you will, by doing some of these rituals and things like that to bring about their desired service to self results they're trying to do. Is that accurate, you think?
It is. That's exactly the point. You can get a knife and cut food and prepare food for someone and feed a family, or you could use a knife and stab someone, and it's the same knife. It's just what's in your mind.
Again, going back to the person, before you joined us, we were talking about no matter who created a version of Satan historically in any culture, even if you want to hang everything on Satan, it's a person who actually does the deed. It comes down to the people who are doing the wrong.
That's exactly right. And in the ancient Hebrew tradition, they used to on an annual basis, they used to mentally to have rituals and putting all their sins onto a goat, and then walk this goat into the desert and leave it there. And it was a representation of how their sins were taken away. And that's how today we have the picture of the scapegoat.
The scapegoat.
The scapegoat. That's the idea, and that's also where we get the idea of the Baphomet, which is the goat.
Which is the goat.
That it's responsible for all of our sins, but it's in effect we are the ones that sin. We are the ones that have issues, and the idea that you can just shift these mistakes to someone else is something that it's pretty much invented, and I'm sorry to be keeping keep bringing the law of one over and over again, but it's a very rich material. They say I keep asking myself, why did the guardians or the angels or whatever allow Orion to come into this planet. The reason is that there was a calling. There was a calling. There were a lot of people. There were a lot of people that had dark tendencies and called for Orion. So there is a duality between Confederation and Orion, because a lot of people in our planet, and even us as well. So when we get angry, that's a call for negativity. So Orion is here because we do have a dark side in us, and that's where.
But if you look statistically at the amount of people that we suspect are practicing Satanists or practicing Luciferians, who are controlling media, government, finance, medicine, education, their number seems so small compared to the masses who are praying to Jesus, praying to Buddha, who are still maybe making mistakes and doing bad things occasionally, but they're not calling in the darkness. There seems to be a real divide that there's only a few calling in the darkness, but they have a great deal of power and money. They're at the very top of the human echelon.
That's right. And this is what I sometimes I get really frustrated, because the positive path is about helping people, and it's about not trying to impose your ego on others. And so people that are positive, they tend to be like people like social workers, nurses, and people that will try to help out in society. Whereas the negative path is about the exaltation of ego
and money, power, Wall Street.
You see a lot of CEOs and things like that that are, they might not be in the cabal or, the elite, part of the elite, but they're still in that service to self, climbing the corporate ladder on the rungs of the shoulders of other people. They've still got that service to self mentality. And it really goes, you can still be poor and still be that way. So it's riddled throughout everybody, but that's where we see, they're sort of deceived in a way, because a lot of them aren't doing it. They just think it's a dog eat dog world. That's how I was raised. This is how you get to the top, and that's sort of how they end up there. It's like any one of us could have been there. You know what I mean?
They're focusing on matter instead of focusing on spirit, whereas we and our group, our community, tends to focus on spirit instead of focusing on matter.
That's right. And then another thing is, it seems like they've really, when you talked about the scapegoat and all of that, the first thing I was thinking is how they seem to hijack the message of Jesus, which was a more spiritual, loving message, and turned it into this sort of scapegoat type mentality that, you do something wrong, you put it on him, he'll take it away for you, and you're not responsible anymore for it. And that's really, he's your ticket to heaven, so to speak. And if you don't take that ticket, your only other choice is to burn for eternity. And it's like these few at the top don't really need to include everyone if they can sort of get in there and screw around with the information of all the other little groups everyone's in, and have everybody sort of stagnant in their spiritual walk, you know what I mean? And not really progressing. I don't need to do anything because it's been handled for me. And it's probably going to tick some people off, but that was sort of my wake up call when I realized how, when I read Jesus's writings, he didn't seem to be teaching what they taught in church. And they would typically go to Paul's writings, which seemed to be more of the scapegoat type mentality that you were talking about, which seemed to be invented and not supported by Jesus. So.
That's right. So the problem with, I think you to make a very bad pun, you hit the nail on the head.
Oh God. Yeah, I think we all agree with that, Shane. That is that is just true. Just so true.
Yeah, there was an agenda there, and it's not just Christianity. It's throughout everything. And that's what we were kind of talking about before Paulo came in, is that a lot of these groups seem to, like when they were talking about a one world government and things like that, it seemed like maybe they had good intentions to begin with. You know, I've watched
well, that's what I'm wondering. The people who, the Theosophists wrote about it in the 1880s to the 1920s, it all looks positive to me. When did it turn to negative, or was it always secretly negative? I can't decide. And I've been reading and reading and like thousands of pages of the Theosophists, because their New World Order, one world government, New Age, Age of Aquarius, it's all happening. And they're in the United Nations now. So was it always secretly negative, or was it positive back then, and then the Satanists got a hold of it, the Freemasons got a hold of it, and turned it negative? What do you think?
Like Paulo was saying with Jehovah, it was, the group was positive, and then at some point they got hijacked, and then the original Jehovah wasn't even using that name anymore. It was sort of hijacked by the Orion group. The Law of One talks about this. Do you think this is just happening with every time something positive pops in, it just gets hijacked? Is that what do you think, Paulo?
I think that's exactly the case. That's if you there is a Law of One scholar that I've been listening to almost on a daily basis for, I don't know, more than a year. His name is Scott Mendelker. He's American, and I think he lives in Taiwan. And if you go to his podcast on the Law of One, you will understand how, time after time, there is an intervention in humanity. Positive information is given, and this information is twisted. This information is distorted and transformed somehow into negative by the Orion group. And this is this actually frustrates Dr. Mendelker, because he keeps thinking, why do these people in the Confederation, why are they still giving us information at all? Because it's clear that the information will be twisted, will be kidnapped or hijacked, and he doesn't understand why the Confederation has been allowed to give us information over and over again. The case of Theosophy is typical. It was positive information, and it was co-opted.
It was from they channeled the Tibetan, who became Dwal Kul, was later identified as. So it's a very Tibetan approach to sharing the world, sharing the resources. And now it's completely twisted into the negative. I mean, even weren't we saying before we actually went on, Shane, that the Vatican has a giant telescope called Lucifer? Yes. So, and the Gnostics are bringing up Lucifer. So I think they're trying to kind of switch from Jesus and Christ to Lucifer. And I don't know that they're going to be successful, and the masses are not going to suddenly accept Lucifer because they say so.
Yeah. And it's funny that, I was listening to Paulo talking about this with religion and everything, and think about the different people that's come up with, technology. And then, the government swoops in, steals the papers, kills the person, keeps it for themselves, because they don't want free energy floating around. They want to always, it's all about, it's about enslavement at the end of the day.
Well, then how do we overcome it? What's the solution? Because we don't want a revolution. We don't want a bloody war, because if you overtake your bloody dictators with blood and violence, you just get more of the same. So what is the solution to bringing service to others and compassion into our government and into our finance system? How do we do that?
Well, yes, we have been asking this question for 6,000 years. and we have the solution. So if you are watching this video right now, we have the solution.
Be glad you tuned in. I think it's, we don't participate anymore, but I think the first step to doing that would be, to raise awareness. Human consciousness has to evolve to the point of recognizing the enslavement we're in. If you don't realize you're enslaved, then, why you're just going to play along. You're going to go to the voting booths for their two different, the false dichotomy of these two candidates, that they present to you to, you know, this fake choice that you have many times, you know, and it's like we're just playing along. We're using their paper money. We're, you know, buying into this. I mean, if we just stopped using money,
eating their GMOs, you know, we're buying their products. We're on them right now. All three of us are guilty of using the technology of the so-called beast. We're using it to communicate.
Yeah,
that's right. And I think you're absolutely right, Shane, when you said that I think that the key or the most important idea is to raise awareness. And this is a big fight. So first of all, we need to be loving and caring in everything that we do. Treat others as we would like to be treated. And Eileen is absolutely right in the sense that revolution is not the way to go, because revolution, say armed revolution, fighting, etc. This is what they want. That's exactly what they are aiming for. And if we do this, this will be a step towards the negative path. Now, so basically, the idea is develop love within us, develop love and compassion towards others, raising awareness as much as we can, talking to people about these issues, and keeping a positive attitude, keeping an attitude of victory of love and light. And the more that we think about this, the more that we think about love and light, the more that we are changing our reality towards that which we are mentalizing. And even simple things, for example, we are not aware of the power of human mind and human consciousness, and how creating a reality in your life makes this reality manifest in the physical. This is the great issue that has been hidden away from us on purpose, of course. And it is something that is so important that if you stop and think and you start trying to measure these things in your daily life, you will realize that's the case. So, for example, a very simple example. I like flight simulators. I fly in a computer, and one of my favorite flight adventures now is taking secret people or prisoners, VIP prisoners, from the south of Florida into Guantanamo Bay, which is, if you there are a number of sites that are actually checking out that there is the number of flights, of unmarked flights into and out of Guantanamo Bay has increased exponentially recently, and there is something really interesting, really strange going on there. And people think, well, this could be a positive thing if we are actually transferring VIP prisoners, Luciferians, into that. If the coup, so to speak, has already started, that will be one of the first things to take place. So I started doing this and mentalizing, creating this reality in my mind.
And by doing that, you're pushing it along. By doing that, you're seeding it. By doing that, you're helping it to move forward. Yeah, whatever we think about comes about, and whatever we feel about comes about even quicker. So right. I think you're right. And the Mande1a Effect is the big wake-up call that we have an effect on matter. So why aren't we getting together? Because there's so many more of us who are positive and loving, and just literally taking over the world with our love together. You know, like I don't know how to organize it.
And I think that's sort of like one person at a time, as we, you know, pull people in and pull them out of the daily grind of just working and, you know, material things that you just purchase or whatever, you're sort of pulling them back to love. And the more people we can do that with, at some point we'll hit this tipping point where we just shift. You know, I think our reality just changes on a metaphysical level. You know, I don't know. That's sort of how I see it happening.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And you guys, check out Lynn McTaggart. I know you both know her from The Field and the Intention Experiment, but she has a YouTube channel now. And today she talked about her book, The Power of Eight. And I listened for about an hour on the way into the graduation ceremony. And she was saying that you can literally do it with 8 people. You know, I don't know. I'm going to read the book. I've got it here. I haven't read it yet. So I need to know why she says 8. I know it's an infinity number, etc. But she's saying if you get a group together, you don't have to do an intention with thousands of people on the internet. You can do it over the internet with 8 people. And those 8 people, when they join their intention together, have a tremendous effect on matter, a tremendous effect on reality. And the more they do that, the more they heal themselves. The more they do that, the more powerful they become. So everything that you do for the group comes back to you 1,000-fold. So if your intention is to heal people, your body will heal. If your intention is to bring peace somewhere, your life will be peaceful. So I think we should all like read The Power of Eight and see if we can kind of harness the Mande1a Effect with intention. And maybe I'm doing it on my own. Paulo, you're doing it on your own. Shane, you're doing it on your own. But maybe we can get a small group together and do it together.
Yeah,
that is an amazing idea. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I heard somebody, I thought it was you. I asked you about this last time, Paulo, but somebody had said, you know, if you had, I think it was 32 or 33 people joining their intention together, it was enough to cover all the other people that weren't, you know, doing it because of the exponential increase of joining your power. It would cover, you know, all 8 billion or 9 billion. How many people is there now?
7.5. I don't know. How many people are on the earth now?
It changed at some point, and I was like, "What? It changed?" But yeah, it's So yeah, I don't know which way it changed.
It is an amazingly small number that would account for that would generate a calling power that are equal to the whole humanity. It is incredibly small. But it's so the idea of combining intentions is everywhere, and the idea of the exponential power of combined intentions is, you know, pretty much everywhere. It's the law of one talks about the what they call the doubling effect. You know, Jesus in the New Testament, he says, wherever 2 or more get together in my name, so I'll be there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was
the 100th monkey, which actually occurred. Yeah,
that's right. So there is something in this combination, in this synchronization of minds that is extremely powerful.
Definitely, I agree with that.
We have a huge community here of loving people. And Shane, you kind of drew them to you like something to honey, not flies, because everybody felt safe in your community. They felt like they could express themselves. So if we're going to do something together to help the world through our combined intentions, I think that this community here is a really great place to try it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And if we only need, you know, a few people, I'd say let's go for it. You know, that's sort of why, you know, me and Michelle's been doing the group meditation, but, you know, maybe more focusing it, you know, with more intention towards goals is maybe what we should do rather than just, I mean, we should be united, don't get me wrong, but maybe we should actually try to focus it on some objectives, you know?
Yeah, like we want a compassionate okay, I just learned in high school government that there's a constitutional provision that if the government ever stops representing the people, you have a constitutional right to disband the government and create a truly representative government. Nobody knows that. And I'm not suggesting that we do that tomorrow, but we need a compassionate government, and we need a government that represents the people. And not Goldman Sachs and the Rothschilds and, you know, the Illuminati.
Definitely. Yeah.
And you do too, Paulo. Over in Australia, I have a lot of friends over there, and you've got exactly the same problem.
It's the same problem, yeah. If not worse, because the population is relatively small, so a small number of cabal people would take control relatively easily.
And they have.
And they have, and they are pretty much all over the planet. Now, I just wanted to go back to one item that Eileen mentioned a few minutes ago, which was the technology. So we are here using the technology, the cabal created technology, to try to convey a positive message, and this I think that there is a very sneaky plan from the positive side, whoever you want to call the positive side of the Confederation, or the angels, or whatever. And it's related to the population explosion that we had over or since the 1940s, or basically over the actually more
baby
than
boom. They called it the baby boom.
And I think that it's a very clever plan, and it's something that every time that I start to consider this, I get really amazed, because what happened was we had a population explosion, we had a baby boom, and then we had Gen X and Gen Y, etc. The population today is more than 7 billion people, and these allowed a proliferation of technology. Everybody now has a mobile phone. People in Africa, for example, they can't live without mobile phones. They use mobile phones to pay and buy things, and all of that stuff. And I think that this was a clever ploy of the positive side to undermine the influence of the cabal, because they have lost the power to influence people. Yes, just yesterday I was listening to the SGT report, which is a great US channel there, and they were talking about how all of these media conglomerates, they are losing their influencing power because there's so many YouTube channels, or Facebook pages. They're providing information, and the and information is now getting directly to the people by the people. So I every now and then that I find myself in a traffic jam, or in a crowded bus, I don't get angry anymore, because I now I understand that this massive increase in population had a plan, and the plan was destabilize the cabal, and also give people one last opportunity to get their act together before Earth shifts into fourth density positive. It really is one last plan, or sorry, one last exam to allow people to shift into this new reality as well. So the technology side of things was an enabler of this greater population, and I think that historians will look at technology, as you mentioned, Eileen, as one of the factors that contributed to destabilizing the cabal, even though it was arguably created by them.
And I think this goes to what we were talking about earlier. It's like I don't think they ever wanted us to have this much technology at our fingertips, but it's like they lost control, and it's like something they meant to be this inside thing for themselves, or to use it like television to indoctrinate or to get out their message, is turned around and bit them, and it's like I brought up the whole what the devil means for evil God will turn the good thing that we would be told in church growing up, and it's like that same thing. It's like they came up with this technology, and it's just turned around, and it's a tool. It's like television. you can, television or the internet or any of that, it could be used, for dark reasons, or it can be used for positive. And more people are turning to the positive to use these tools that might have been meant for something else, but now we're using them instead of to kill with, to garden with, or whatever, if you think of it like a gardening tool or something.
Mm-hmm. Right. Like the three of us, we're the people. Yeah. We are not media. We're not CNN. We're not, Ted Turner. We are the people who use the technology of the deep state or the Illuminati cabal, and we're using it to reach out to other people and of like minds, basically. Now, what if, how the Illuminati has been subliminally programming all the fear, darkness, fear, constantly in our TV, movies, everything, our politics. Mm-hmm. What if they're using us to visualize the world that they want to create? And what if we just start visualizing the world that we want to create, which would be peaceful, cooperative, compassionate, even to animals? If we ate animals, we'd do it humanely, right? What if that's the whole point of this subliminal fear-mongering, is so that they use the population to visualize what they want, which gives them power, basically.
Which gets into predictive programming too, how we see them showing us things before it happened. And it's like, did we create that because they showed it to us, or did we allow it, or were we more accepting of it because we got these little glimpses of it beforehand? So I think that's a really good point. And like you said, we're actually, that's why I say that about religion all the time. The last thing they want is millions of little Jesus characters running around, you know what I mean? Because Jesus was really a rebel to the powers that be of his day,
and maybe still is today through us. Maybe this Christ consciousness continues, and when we start to pool our visions and our expectations, because the Mande1a Effect taught us that we can change matter, and when we start to pool that, we far, far, far outnumber them. And then maybe that's when the shift happens. Maybe that's when fourth density positive or 5D Earth happens. When enough people visualize the same kind of planet in a positive, loving, compassionate way.
Right. And then we wake up one day to a new Earth, and, these other people that maybe were just kind of observers to what we've done will say, no, it's always been like this.
What nuclear weapons? What's a nuclear bomb? Yeah. I've never heard of that.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be wonderful.
And they would think, well, Goldman Sachs was bad. Well, they always helped me. It was,
exactly.
They always supported charities, and it would be really lovely to have, and the Mande1a Effect suggests that something like that is possible.
Definitely,
a shift like that is possible. And the insight that you, Eileen, had just right now, that they would the cabal could be outsourcing their negativity to our minds. I think that it's critical. It's a very good insight, because this is exactly, they are exactly trying to do this multiplicative power of combining and synchronizing minds, but in a negative way.
Yeah, in a fearful way, where we need more bombs because we don't feel safe. They make us feel unsafe, so we're like, here's our money, build more bombs,
Exactly.
Or we give them our children and say, send our kids to Syria, send our kids to Iran. No. At some point, you have to draw that line. And somehow, there's so many more of us. There's so many more goodies on the planet than baddies. Somehow, we're going to get together and figure this out. I think so.
Totally agree. Right.
And we look at, Shane was discussing about conditional programming. This is a very powerful tool, and it actually makes the Luciferians or the Cabal appear 100 times more powerful than they really, really are. Because everything that we receive everything we are force-fed is negative. And the impression that you have just by watching the news is that the world is collapsing. And in 1983, one of the people that were working in the Law of Wonders, Don Elkins, he actually asked Ra say, hang on a second, why is Earth expected to shift into fourth density positive? Everything that we see around us is negative. So why aren't we shifting to fourth density negative? And Ross says, look, it's because of the quiet horror that all of the positive beings in your planet face the situation that you're in. So basically what he's saying was, look, your planet is heavily positive, but all of the positive people, they are in a state of quiet horror, looking
Sleeper
at
cells.
that's yeah, exactly. And so this is the reason why your planet is going to go into positive. But so you have this very noisy, negative elite or self-described elite, and they control the media, etc. But we have this massive group of positive beings that have made their choice, and they're going to cause, or we are going to cause the planet to shift into a positive status. And it's like we are quiet. We are quietly horrified.
Yeah. And then even the news, they never, hardly ever do they report any good news or things with people helping people. It's always murders and, just all the bad stuff. So that's all gets highlighted in the media. And then it just seems like you're in this horrible world with no good people in it. But, as soon as something breaks out, like we saw with Houston, you see all these people offering up their boats and their time to go help other strangers. And, there's beautiful people out there that's just waiting to arise,
Yeah, very beautiful people. So there you go. So it's one more thing that we could do to help the transition is switch off the TV.
Which I've done. I think I watch like America's Got Talent because I'm fascinated with what people do with fire and balls and dogs, and I'm like, but I don't really watch TV. I won't watch reality TV. It's so negative.
And the news, definitely.
I don't watch the news. Nope.
The news. So that's one additional thing that we could do. So it's visualize, create a, and this is why prayer works, because prayer is visualization. Prayer is your intention. Intention is light, so that's thought, and you charge that intention with love. So prayer is very emotional. So it's you have both components. You have light and love.
And then I would just add to that, after you have the electrical and the magnetic, act on it. That's the kinetic energy. A lot of people sit back and they do the thought and they do the feeling and they do the prayer. And then they go, but God isn't answering my prayers, because there's one missing element that makes the Trinity. And that's the action, putting kinetic energy behind your thoughts and behind your heart. Get up and do something, feed somebody, volunteer somewhere, I don't know, visit elderly people in a nursing home. Just somehow act on what you're thinking about and feeling, and then it changes matter. The matter around you starts to change.
Yeah, and it's so simple. Sometimes even a smile to someone, or a good morning, or genuinely asking how people are. So these small things, they go a very long way.
I agree. But let's start acting more in positive ways, not acting in negative ways, like to bring down the cabal. Let's act out our beautiful thoughts and feelings and reach out to our community and see if we can't change the world that way.
Amen to that. Definitely. Well, I guess we probably better wrap this up. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm glad you finally made it on.
Yeah.
Paulo, SpiritWalker.
Sorry, I'm late.
No,
okay.
Late's better than never, man. It was a wonderful talk.
We kept talking about you while you weren't here. We're like, oh, and SpiritWalker did this video, and then he did that.
But yeah, I do have both links for Eileen and Paulo SpiritWalker in one channel down below. So please do go subscribe and check out their videos. And I also, this Sunday, I am going to be on a radio show. It's called Twin Flame Divine Fire. It's going to be on Truth Frequency Radio. That's an iHeart Radio station with Alan and Sandra. I do have that information below, so please do tune in. You can actually go to their website, which is also listed below, and you can see the information on it. But I'll be on there. They're going to be taking calls, so if you want to call into the program, it's going to be a 2-hour program, and that's this Sunday.
That's great.
10 to 12 p.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time, and 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll probably go on. I'll be announcing it tomorrow, and I'll go to their website and show that information. But really excited about it. They're wonderful. I'm going to have them on here too. We haven't set a date yet, but definitely want to have Alan and Sandra on. They're all part of the family. We're all connected. As soon as you start talking to these, just you feel that connection. You know what I mean? We're all playing for the same team, and all wonderful people. And we got N5D in the house. I want to do a shout out to him as well. Thanks for hopping in here. And well, with that, I will bid the chat room lots of love. And
thank you, Shane. Thank you, Paulo. And thank you, everybody in the chat room. I'll go look now and see what you guys said.
Yeah, maybe we'll do something next weekend or something if you guys have something. Yeah. We could do this. We could do this a lot because we're never gonna. The hour went by so fast. Actually, it's been an hour and a half, but about an hour since Paulo joined us. So I'm really
That's a great idea.
All right, well, I guess we'll sign off, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Peace, everybody.
Bye, guys. Mwah.